Imagine a Tibetan master, right? Like someone who has spent decades,
Maybe an entire lifetime.
yeah, exactly, an entire lifetime meditating in the high, thin air of the Himalayas.
Right.
They've dedicated, I mean, every waking hour to mastering the incredibly dense, just complex landscape of the human mind.
And achieving these states of profound inner
Right.
peace.
States that most of us can barely even comprehend, let alone actually experience.
Oh, absolutely.
So take that master carrying centuries of this ancient sacred wisdom and imagine dropping them right into the middle of a glowing, bustling, neon-lit digital shopping mall.
Wow. That's an incredibly jarring image.
It really is.
Just this brutal collision of the ancient and the hyper-commercial.
Right. And they're sitting there cross-legged,
Yeah.
basically fighting for your attention against this hyper-stimulating wall of, steamy romance novels.
Pulse-pounding CIA thrillers.
Exactly. And like half-price coupons for pizza delivery.
Yeah, it's absurd when you picture it.
But the thing is, that is exactly what is happening in your pocket right now.
That's the reality of how we interact with wisdom today.
It is. And, well, welcome to the deep dive.
We have a highly unusual mission for this deep dive, actually.
We really do. Normally, we're sifting through hundreds of pages of research or dense historical accounts or these massive data sets.
Right, big overarching sources.
But today, our source material is so small, so brief, it almost feels like a joke, to be honest.
Yeah.
We are looking at a single digital breadcrumb.
Which, I mean, that presents a completely different kind of analytical challenge.
How so?
Well, when you have an entire book, the arguments are laid out for you, right?
So you can just follow the chapters.
Exactly. But when you have just a fragment, you have to look at the mechanism surrounding that fragment.
The packaging.
Yes. You have to ask how the fragment is packaged, how it is labeled, and where it is placed in the world.
Exactly. So let me lay out exactly what this fragment is for you listening, because we are going to spend the rest of our time together just tearing it apart.
Piece by piece.
Right. Our source material consists of precisely 4 elements. First, the Spanish word texto, which means text.
Okay.
Second, a book title, Cómo transformar tu vida, which translates to how to transform your life.
Right. Big promise.
Very big. Third, the author's name, Geshe Kelsang Gyatso.
Mm-hmm.
And fourth, a hyper-specific digital footprint, which is literally just a link to the Google Play Store. And that is it.
That is the entire inventory we have today.
That's all of it.
So it's a generic category, a massive promise, a culturally adapted name, and a modern commercial URL.
So here is our mission. How do we deconstruct just a few lines of metadata to understand how profound wisdom is packaged, translated, and distributed in our modern hyper-connected era?
That's a huge question.
Are we looking at a democratization of enlightenment where ancient wisdom is finally accessible to everyone? Or are we looking at the ultimate commodification of meaning?
Where life-changing philosophy is just, another product ID in a server farm somewhere.
Right. That tension between ancient sacredness and modern commodification is the central mystery here.
Because even the metadata of a book, the specific words chosen for its title, the spelling of the author's name, the platform of delivery, none of this is accidental.
It's all chosen.
Exactly. It all reveals these sweeping insights about the cross-cultural exchange of ideas.
So let's start with the very first element, which I find just incredibly stark.
The category.
Right. The source material begins by identifying the excerpt simply as texto. T-E-X-T-O.
Yeah.
Doesn't call it a book. It doesn't call it a sacred manuscript or a guide or a comprehensive manual.
Just text.
Just text.
It is a really deliberate stripping away of pretense, I think.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about how we usually encounter information. It is almost always framed for us.
Okay, right.
Like a novel tells us to expect a narrative arc. A manual tells us to expect instructions.
Well, scripture demands a posture of reverence.
Exactly. But when you categorize a piece of writing simply as text, you are performing a very specific kind of framing by essentially attempting to remove the frame altogether.
Huh. It feels very utilitarian.
Yes.
Brutally honest, almost.
It elevates the written word itself as a raw vehicle for change. It signals to the reader that the physical object doesn't matter.
The cover art is irrelevant.
Completely. The formatting is secondary. What matters is the raw, unvarnished data.
Right.
In a historical context, a text was something you analyzed, something you wrestled with. It wasn't just passive consumption.
As an active process.
Right. Calling it a texto demands a certain level of active engagement from the reader.
Wait, but let me push back on that a bit.
Sure.
Because if I'm scrolling through my phone and something is just labeled text, I'm not sure my brain immediately goes to, ah, yes, raw, unvarnished data demanding my active engagement.
No.
My brain goes to, this is a generic file. It sounds like an error message, like text underscore file underscore 01.txt.
Okay, I see what you're saying. That is the modern digital overlay on an older academic concept.
Right, because it just feels so stripped down.
You are right that in computing, a text file is the most basic, unformatted type of data. It has no bolding, no italics, no layout.
Just letters.
But philosophically, that is exactly the point. It is pure information. It is the architectural blueprint without the glossy marketing brochure.
Okay, I can see that. It is not trying to romance you. It's just saying, here is the data.
Exactly.
But then, and this is where it gets interesting, immediately following that incredibly understated, bare bones categorization of texto, we get the title.
And the title is the furthest thing from understated.
Right. The title is Cómo transformar tu vida, how to transform your life.
The juxtaposition there is staggering.
It really is.
You pair the ultimate generic category text with the ultimate absolute promise transformation.
I really want to dig into this promise, actually, because this is where my skepticism flares up.
Oh, tough.
If you are a learner,
Right.
and you are walking through a physical bookstore or scrolling through a digital storefront, and you see a title that makes such a direct, massive promise, doesn't that actually backfire?
In what way?
Well, it's like someone walking up to you on the street and saying, hey, I have the secret to the universe.
Right.
My immediate reaction is to check my wallet and walk away.
Yeah, it definitely triggers a defense mechanism in a lot of people.
Yeah, because it just sounds too good to be true.
We are conditioned by a highly marketed world to be wary of absolute claims. If a toothpaste promises to make your teeth a little whiter, you believe it.
Sure.
But if it promises to completely reinvent your social life, you don't.
Right. So why do publishers use these massive sweeping titles? How to transform your life?
That's a fair question.
It's like finding a map that doesn't show you the terrain, the mountains, the rivers, or the dangers along the way. It just has a giant glowing X that says, here is the treasure.
Yeah.
It feels almost irresponsible, you know?
To understand why these titles persist, though, and why they are undeniably effective, we have to look past our initial skepticism.
Okay.
We have to examine the psychological state of the person who actually clicks on that title.
So not someone like me who's just browsing.
Right. You are approaching the title from a baseline of relative stability. You see the massive claim, your rational filter engages, and you reject it.
I roll my eyes and keep scrolling.
Exactly. But what about the person who isn't operating from a baseline of stability?
You mean someone who is in crisis?
Exactly. Or even just someone who is deeply, profoundly exhausted by the status quo.
Ah, shit.
Because incremental change, the whole how to marginally improve your mornings or 5 ways to reduce stress by 10%.
The life hack stuff.
Right. That incremental change requires sustained, daily, grinding effort, often with very little visible reward in the short term.
It's exhausting.
It appeals to the rational mind. But when someone is at an inflection point or they are just burnt out, the rational mind is often overwhelmed.
So they aren't looking for a minor adjustment anymore. They want a complete paradigm shift.
They want the glowing X on the map.
Wow.
The audacity of the title is its primary feature. It projects absolute authority over the human condition.
That makes a lot of sense.
When you are lost in the woods, you don't want a guide who says, well, we might try heading north and maybe we'll find a stream, but, you know, there are no guarantees.
Right. You want someone who says, I know exactly how to get us out of here. Follow me.
Exactly. I know the way out of the maze.
Yes.
That's what How to Transform Your Life is saying.
Yes.
And let's look at the actual mechanism of that word, transform.
Okay, let's break it down.
It comes from the Latin roots trans, meaning across or beyond, and formare, to form.
Okay.
So it literally means to change the fundamental shape or nature of a thing. It is not about improving the current form.
It's about abandoning the current form for a completely new one.
Right. It taps into a very specific kind of hope. The hope that there is a secret, a key, a specific alignment of ideas that, once understood, will cause all the friction in your life to suddenly cease.
But, and I have to ask, isn't that a false hope? Because no text, I don't care how profound it is,
Yeah.
can literally do that for you overnight.
Yeah.
It almost feels like the title is setting the reader up for failure.
That is absolutely the danger of the absolute promise. It can create an expectation of passive metamorphosis.
Like it's a pill you swallow.
Exactly. The reader might subconsciously think, if I just consume this text, the transformation will happen to me.
Right.
But in almost all Eastern philosophical traditions, including the one this author comes from, the text is merely the pointing finger.
It just shows you where to look.
Yes, the actual transformation requires immense, grueling personal effort.
So the title gets them in the door, but the actual texto demands the work.
Precisely. The title bypasses the rational filter by speaking directly to that emotional exhaustion, but the content itself then has to reconstruct the rational path.
It is a fascinating psychological bait and switch.
It really is.
Okay, so if the title represents this ultimate destination, this massive promise of changing our fundamental shape, we have to look very closely at the identity of the guide offering to take us there.
The author.
Right, who is making this staggering claim. And that brings us to the third element of our source material, the author, Geshe Kelsang Gyatso.
And this is where our analysis really starts to reveal the mechanics of globalization and cultural bridging.
Because the name itself tells a story.
Just looking at the letters in that name, we are immediately pulled into a deeply complex story.
So the name Kelsang Gyatso is distinctly Eastern, specifically Tibetan.
Yes.
It instantly signals a tradition of wisdom that is vastly different from Western philosophical or religious traditions. It suggests a lineage, you know.
It does. But the true focal point here, linguistically speaking, is that first word, Geshe.
Right, because Geshe is not a first name.
No, it is an academic degree and a spiritual title within Tibetan Buddhism. It is roughly equivalent to a doctorate in Buddhist philosophy, but it requires decades of rigorous study and debate to achieve.
Decades. Wow.
It signals an immense level of authority. But what is truly fascinating about our source material is the specific orthography, the spelling of that title.
G-U-E-S-H-E.
Right.
Because the standard English way to write that title is just Geshe. G-E-S-H-E.
Exactly. When an English speaker sees G-E-S-H-E, convention dictates that we pronounce it with a hard G, like in get or guest, Geshe.
Which roughly approximates the original Tibetan sound.
Right.
But our source text is not in English.
No.
The title is Como transformar tu vida. It is Spanish.
And this is where the mechanics of translation become incredibly elegant.
How so?
Well, in the Spanish language, the phonetic rules are strict. If you place a G directly in front of an E or an I, it produces a soft, aspirate sound, very similar to the English H.
Oh, okay.
Think of the word general in Spanish, which is pronounced general, or gigante, pronounced gigante.
So if a Spanish publisher just took the English spelling, G-E-S-H-E, a Spanish reader would look at it and pronounce it Geshe.
Exactly. Which completely severs the acoustic connection to the original Tibetan word.
The sound is totally lost.
The identity of the title is mangled.
So to fix this, to preserve the acoustic reality of the Tibetan word, that hard G sound, the translator or the publisher inserts the letter U, G-U-E-S-H-E.
Exactly. Under the rules of Spanish orthography, inserting a silent U between the G and the E acts as a phonetic shield.
A phonetic shield. I love that.
The U protects the hard G from the softening effect of the E. Examples would be words like guerra, which means war, or guitarra, guitar.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
By spelling it G-U-E-S-H-E, the publisher guarantees that a reader in Madrid or Buenos Aires or Bogota will read the word and automatically produce the sounds Geshe.
I want to pause here because this is just such a powerful mechanism.
It really is.
It's like adapting an electrical plug so it fits safely into a foreign outlet.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. If you just jam an American plug into a European socket, you get nothing. Or worse, you blow a fuse.
Yeah.
The spelling Geshe with the U is the literal adapter. It lets the current of the author's message flow directly into the Spanish language without losing its original phonetic integrity.
That is a brilliant analogy. The U is the adapter. And what this single letter demonstrates is a highly deliberate, deeply respectful effort to cross a cultural boundary.
It's not just a copy-paste job.
No, it proves that the dissemination of this text wasn't just some lazy, automated mass publishing process.
Someone had to sit down and do the math,
So a
basically.
human being had to sit down, look at the phonetic rules of Spanish, listen to the auditory reality of Tibetan, and build a tiny, specific bridge to connect the two.
But let me ask you this, because it brings up a much larger issue for me. We are talking about translating deep, complex, ancient philosophical concepts across vastly different languages.
Totally just right, yes.
If we have to build these little adapters just for the author's title, What happens to the actual philosophy inside the book?
Ah,
Is something inherently lost when we adapt concepts to fit a new linguistic system? Like, does making it fit the Spanish outlet change the voltage of the message?
You are hitting on one of the oldest debates in linguistics and philosophy.
Really?
Oh, yeah. There's an Italian phrase, traditore.
What does that mean?
It means translator, traitor.
Oh, wow. Traitor.
It captures this perfectly. Every single act of translation is an act of interpretation.
Because there's no perfect one-to-one match.
Exactly. It is impossible to move a complex concept from Tibetan to Spanish without it taking on the cultural baggage, the historical connotations, and the semantic nuance of the Spanish language.
Give me an example of how that works. Like, how does a concept change when it crosses that bridge?
Let's take the core concept of the title itself, transformation.
Okay.
In a Western Spanish-speaking context, transformer often carries connotations of self-improvement, of individual empowerment.
Right. Getting ahead, getting better.
It aligns with a culture that values individual achievement. We want to transform ourselves to be better, faster, happier.
Very me-centric.
Very. But in a traditional Buddhist context, the ultimate goal of philosophical study isn't to build a better, stronger individual self.
It's not.
No, it is often to realize that the individual permanent self is an illusion.
Oh.
True transformation in that context is about dissolving the ego, not upgrading it.
Whoa. Okay, so the Western reader sees Como transformar tu vida and thinks, great, I'm going to become a super version of myself.
yes.
But the Eastern text is actually trying to teach them that the self they want to improve doesn't even exist.
That is the exact risk. The Spanish word transformer is the closest available container for the concept, but it might be the wrong shape.
Right.
The translation might inadvertently prime the reader with Western expectations for an Eastern philosophy.
So is it even worth doing that? If the container is the wrong shape, doesn't it warp the water you pour into it?
Well, the purist might say it is dangerous to dilute the teachings.
Keep it pristine.
But the alternative is linguistic isolation. If you demand perfect semantic fidelity, the wisdom remains locked behind a language barrier, inaccessible to the nearly 500 million native Spanish speakers in the world.
The knowledge basically stays on the mountain.
Exactly. The pragmatist argues that the core essence of the texto is robust enough to survive the journey.
It can handle a little distortion.
Yes. The reader might start with Western expectations, but the text itself, if it is powerful enough, will gradually reshape those expectations as they read.
I see.
The adaptation doesn't ruin the wisdom, it democratizes it.
It gets them in the door.
It builds the bridge.
Yeah.
And the fact that we see this careful linguistic adaptation, the Yuan Geshe, suggests that the publishers believe the bridge is worth building, even if the crossing is imperfect.
The democratization of enlightenment. I love that idea.
It's a powerful way to look at it.
But that brings us directly to the final, and to me, the most fascinating element of our source material today.
The URL.
Yes. We have this generic texto. We have this profound ancient promise of transformation. We have this careful, respectful linguistic bridge built between East and West.
All of that weight.
Right. And how is all of this profound, ancient, cross-cultural wisdom actually delivered to the modern learner today?
Through a hyper-modern, completely automated alphanumeric digital link.
https://play.google.com/store/books/id=WS0DGAAQBAJ.
It really is a stunning juxtaposition when you read it out loud like that.
It is the Tibetan master sitting in the neon digital mall.
Literally.
I want to spend some serious time analyzing this URL because I think it captures the absolute essence of our modern relationship with information.
It absolutely does.
We have taken this profound promise of Como transformar tu vida, and we have explicitly grounded it in the most commercial, transactional reality possible.
We are looking at the architecture of the digital storefront.
Right.
And to understand how this changes our relationship to the wisdom, we really need to break down the mechanics of this URL.
Let's do it.
Because it is just as much a text as the title of the book.
Okay, walk me through the URL piece by piece.
Well, it starts with the domain play.google.com.
Right off the bat, play.
Exactly. The very first word framing this encounter with profound spiritual wisdom is a word associated with recreation, games, and entertainment.
Play.
Right. The ecosystem was originally built to distribute mobile games and apps. Books and philosophy were added later.
So it's grandfathered in.
Yes. So immediately, the architecture of the space tells your brain this is a place for amusement.
That is wild to think about. I mean, you don't walk into a cathedral and see a giant neon sign that says play.
No, you don't.
The architecture of a cathedral tells you to be quiet, to be reverent. The architecture of play.google.com tells you to be entertained.
Then we move to the next subdirectory /store/. Yes. Wisdom is explicitly framed as a commodity to be browsed, weighed against competitors, and purchased.
Add to cart.
Exactly. It is not a gift. It is not a sacred transmission from teacher to student. It is a retail exchange.
Wow. And then we get /books/details.
This is the algorithmic sorting.
Okay.
The vast, chaotic universe of human knowledge must be categorized so the database can retrieve it.
Right, it needs a bucket.
It is placed in the book silo, and we are looking at its details, its metadata.
And finally, we get to the end of the link. The unique identifier. IED equals dash WS0 DGAAQBAJ.
This is the text's digital DNA.
It's a barcode for enlightenment.
That is exactly what it is.
Jeez.
In the eyes of the server, the book isn't a life-transforming guide. The server doesn't know what transformation is.
It's just a string of code.
The server only knows that when a user requests that specific ID, it must deliver a specific packet of data. The profound meaning of the text is completely flattened into a string of random characters.
So I have to ask, and this is the big question for me, does this commodification, this flattening of the data, fundamentally change the value of the wisdom?
It's a profound question.
When you reduce how to transform your life to a product ID sitting between a cookbook and a romance novel, does that strip it of its power? Or does it represent the ultimate triumph of accessibility?
I think it represents a massive shift in the mechanics of how we value information.
How so?
Well, historically, human beings evolved to value things that are difficult to obtain.
Right.
If a resource requires immense effort to acquire, our brain automatically categorizes it as highly valuable.
Scarcity equals value.
Yes. Think about how a person historically interacted with transformative texts. Centuries ago, if you wanted the wisdom of a Tibetan master, you literally had to travel to Tibet.
Which was not easy.
No. You had to endure extreme physical hardship. You had to find a teacher, prove yourself worthy, learn the language, and perhaps maybe after years of effort, you would be allowed to read the text.
So the friction of acquiring the text was almost like the initiation.
Exactly. The journey prepared your mind to receive the wisdom. The physical effort signaled to your brain, pay attention, this is important.
Because you sacrificed so much for it.
Right. Even 100 years ago, you had to travel to a specialized library or bookstore, hunt through the stacks, and invest significant time and money.
Good now.
Now, compare that historical friction to the mechanics of the Google Play Store.
Right.
You are waiting in line at the grocery store. You are half distracted by the person in front of you.
Checking your phone.
You tap your screen, you click the URL, and instantly, with zero physical effort, the accumulated wisdom of an ancient lineage is beamed invisibly through the air into a piece of glass and metal in your pocket.
The friction is just gone. It's zero.
And because the friction is zero, our brain struggles to assign value to it.
Oh, wow.
When access is instantaneous and effortless, we default to treating the content as disposable.
Because it's cheap to get.
This is the core of the modern information paradox. We have an absolute, unimaginable abundance of access, but we are constantly battling a profound lack of attention and perceived value.
It's like having a fire hose of water when you're thirsty.
Right.
You have all the water in the world,
Yeah.
but you can't actually drink it because the pressure is just too high.
That is a very apt way to describe information overload. The digital storefront flattens the hierarchy of value.
Yeah.
In the physical world, a massive leather-bound encyclopedia feels different physically than a cheap paperback thriller.
Right. The weight of it tells you something.
The medium communicates weight and importance, but on a digital screen, every item takes up the exact same amount of pixel space.
That's true.
That ID string we read looks visually identical to the ID for a game of Candy Crush.
The UI design treats everything as equal.
Yes. The algorithmic flattening forces everything to compete on the exact same terms.
Which perfectly explains why the title has to be so loud.
Ah, yes.
We talked earlier about Como Transformar Tu Vida being an audacious, almost aggressive promise.
Right.
But if you are competing in a digital marketplace where everything is visually flattened and the user is scrolling past 10 items a second, you can't whisper.
No.
You don't have the luxury of a subtle, nuanced title. You have to shout.
You have to grab the user by the collar in the fraction of a second you have their attention.
Wow.
The medium of the digital storefront necessitates the absolute promise of the title. They are interlocked mechanisms.
That is a huge insight. The delivery system actually dictates the packaging of the wisdom.
But this zero-friction delivery system also creates a very dangerous psychological illusion for the user.
What kind of illusion?
The illusion that because the acquisition of the text is effortless, the application of the text will also be effortless.
Oh, man. I think we are all guilty of that.
Think about the physical act of buying a digital book.
Okay.
You see the title, Promising Transformation. You click the URL. You tap buy.
And it downloads.
In that moment, your brain releases a small hit of dopamine. You feel a brief sense of accomplishment.
Like you did something.
You feel like you have taken a concrete step toward transforming your life.
But you haven't actually done anything yet. You just moved a file from Google server to your phone.
Exactly. We mistake access for mastery.
Wow.
We confuse the possession of the file with the integration of its wisdom. I am sure you have downloaded ebooks, PDFs, or saved articles thinking, this is the one. This is the piece of information that is going to change my habits.
Oh, I have dozens of them. Literally a graveyard of unread, life-changing PDFs.
All right.
They just sit there on my tablet gathering digital dust.
They are potential energy.
Yeah.
The technology can deliver the texto to you flawlessly at the speed of light. The servers can categorize the ID.
The translator can insert the U to perfectly bridge the phonetic gap.
Exactly. The entire architecture of globalized digital commerce works perfectly to place the artifact in your hand. But the technology cannot execute the transformation.
The server doesn't do the push-ups for you. The URL doesn't meditate for you.
No. Which brings us all the way back to the stark simplicity of the very first word in our source material.
Texto.
In the end, despite the bold promises of the title, despite the intricate mechanics of translation, and despite the hyper-complex global digital infrastructure required to host and deliver that URL,
It all collapses down to the raw data.
and the text is passive. It cannot force its way into your mind.
Right.
It cannot rewire your habits. It requires an active agent to bring it to life.
It requires the reader to actually read it.
And not just read it, to wrestle with it, to do the grueling, invisible work of changing their fundamental shape.
This has been an incredibly revealing journey from such an unbelievably small starting point.
It really shows you how much is packed into everyday things.
We literally started with 4 pieces of metadata: a single word categorization, a title, a name, and a web link.
And yet, by analyzing the mechanisms behind those 4 elements, we've uncovered the entire architecture of how modern society interacts with media.
Let's recap the mechanics of what we've discovered, just to tie it all together for you listening.
Good idea.
We started with Texto, recognizing how it strips away the packaging and demands active engagement with raw data.
Right.
Then we unpacked the psychological mechanisms of the title, Cómo transformar tu vida. We saw how absolute, sweeping promises bypass our rational skepticism by appealing directly to our exhaustion and our deep human desire for sudden, alchemical paradigm shifts.
Then we looked at the mechanics of translation. We analyzed how a single letter, the insertion of the U in Geshe, acts as a necessary phonetic adapter.
Allowing the auditory reality of a Tibetan title to survive in the Spanish language.
Exactly. We explored the necessary friction of crossing cultural boundaries, acknowledging that while translation always involves some loss of nuance, the alternative is the isolation of knowledge.
And finally, we dismantled the URL itself. We explored how the digital storefront play .google.com/store algorithmically flattens profound wisdom into a string of alphanumeric characters, forcing it to compete for attention alongside games and thrillers.
We discussed the paradox of zero-friction access.
Right, and how the ease of downloading a file tricks our brains into thinking we've already done the hard work of transformation.
The central thesis we established at the beginning really holds true.
It does.
The tension between ancient sacredness and modern commodification isn't a battle where one side wins. It is a complex ecosystem.
The digital storefront commodifies the wisdom, yes, but it also provides unprecedented democratic access to it.
And the metadata is the map of that ecosystem.
It proves that nothing in our informational landscape is neutral. Every label, every spelling, every URL string tells a profound story about how we value, categorize, and seek out knowledge.
And that is the true value of looking at these micro-artifacts. It forces us to stop taking the delivery systems for granted.
Absolutely. We've taken the Tibetan master out of the neon mall, and hopefully we understand exactly how we got there.
I think we do.
And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive. But before we leave you, I want to circle back to that massive, glowing X on our map, the promise of transformation, and leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over on your own.
Something to sit with.
Exactly. We have established that you live in a world of zero friction access. If the absolute blueprint to completely reinvent your life, the compiled, translated wisdom of an ancient tradition, is literally just a URL click away, resting quietly in your pocket on a server right now. What is the actual barrier to transformation today?
That's the million-dollar question.
For centuries, the barrier was geographical, then the barrier was linguistic, then the barrier was financial. But today, the digital architecture has removed all of those hurdles. Access is infinite.
Completely infinite.
So in a world where the knowledge is freely and perfectly available at the tap of a thumb, is our lack of transformation a problem of finding the right guide? Or is the friction no longer in the world, but entirely within ourselves? Is the final barrier simply our own deeply human hesitation to click the link, engage with the texto, and actually do the hard, quiet, unglamorous work of changing who we are?
That's a powerful thought to end on.
Something to think about the next time you're scrolling through the store. Until next time.